What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, a series in which I give you an appetizer sampler glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. And the goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even start collecting the Force as well. So up on the chopping block this time, by viewer request, is going to be the Mentor's Space Marine chapter, a Loyalist Space Marine chapter that in older publications was called the Mentor Legion chapter. I think they dropped the Legion title to avoid confusion from pre to post heresy stuff. That's my thought process. So, either way, regardless of what you call them, we're talking about the mentors here. It's the same chapter. So they're an interesting chapter. I like them, and what's interesting about them isn't just their fluff of how they are, but also the fluff of their actual founding. Their chapter number is designation 888, so 888. And their color scheme is green helmet, green torso, green backpack, green shoulder pad trim, and green weaponry, black or gold chest emblem, and then white shoulder pad inset, white arms, and white legs. Red helmet lenses, red squad marking, red chapter symbol. The reason I say that is this chapter was founded in 26th founding. And the reason I say that is there was a chapter founded in the 25th founding, same number, designation, same color scheme, probably a different symbol. They were called the Star Scorpions. So what's going on here? Well, they were one founding older than the Mentors. So when they were around, the Mentors didn't exist yet. Problem for the Star Scorpions is their gene seed had a lot of redundant gene seed in it, meaning a lot of useless gene seed, so they couldn't replenish their losses very easily. And ultimately, you could just say, for lack of a better way of describing it, they became lost in the warp and declared destroyed and gone. So they didn't have a very long run. What happened in 26 founding is they utilized a different gene seed source, and they basically transferred over the numerical designation 888 and the assets, including the armor, color scheme, and whatnot, to what would be the Mentors chapter. So it's an interesting chapter founding, kind of almost an inheriting of their look and number and all that. So it's a young chapter, as you might guess from their designation number and being the 26th founding. But they got some interesting stuff going on. Firstly, they like to work alone. That's kind of more of their current fluff, and more of their more modern fluff, if you will. They prefer to do work alone when they are doing campaigns and whatnot. And they're not very trusting of Space Marines, other Space Marines. And on top of that, they're also very much mentors. They will, and I haven't seen anything to disprove this older fluff, but they will basically loan out their tutor squads, their veteran tutor squads, as they call them, to other Imperial agencies, such as the Imperial Guard or whatnot. These squads will, in some instances, take command of the battlefield area that they're in, as well as bolster the forces of the Imperium wherever they need it most. One part commanding, one part doing battle, one part kind of tutelage, if you will, to help the Imperial forces achieve victory. It's an interesting setup, and something on the more unique side of things, which I find kind of cool. On top of that, they have another role, and that is for field testing and R&D purposes of technology, experimental, prototype, and otherwise, ancient and otherwise, which I think is pretty cool. So the Mechanicum comes up with some kooky thing, they field test it, either prove or disprove the concept behind it, and then help it perhaps get into production, making tweaks as they go along. So another interesting setup that is for a long time been just a fluff thing you can represent via customization, but now that's changed a little bit in terms of what you can do with that bit of fluff, which I'll get to in a little bit. But that's their fluff. So pretty interesting setup. They fight against a multitude of forces. They're currently, as of the fluff kind of has been progressed for them, are in battle against Eldar from Biel-Tan, as well as against orcs. So that's kind of like their big campaigns that they're a part of at the moment, you could say. And with that said, you have a very interesting force, a force that's very learned and very capable, and makes them a pretty potent force of being a young chapter. With that said, this brings some interesting ideas for collecting them. Firstly, you could do them as an allied force. This is a really good chapter to do as an allied force if you want to play Inquisition or Imperial Guard or what have you, because of the whole tutor thing. So, the whole tutor squad thing, I should say. So, if you're looking to have Space Marine allies and you weren't sure who to go with, this chapter just fits right in for that, if that's what you wanted to do. I just wanted to bring that up because I like talking about actually playing them as a standalone force without anything else. So, but I did want to bring that up because of their fluff. So, in terms of actually collecting them, codex-wise, the Space Marine Codex has always kind of been their go-to codex to use. They are speculated to be a Raven Guard Gene Seed descent, so you could use that chapter tactic if you wanted to, but really any chapter tactic will suffice for you. And then from there, you can represent their R&D purposes and field testing with just converting up weaponry, making their stuff look a bit different, a bit more experimental, if you will, and so on. You can also make use of supplements to further spice up your force a bit. That's all well and good and will work just fine. However, with the Deathwatch Codex being a thing for a bit now, I can't help but look at that and think there's a lot of potential there for a force like the Mentors. Yes, an official GW chapter, but I feel given their fluff and given what the Deathwatch has, war gear-wise in it, and how they do things, you could definitely look at that as a potential use as a codex for the Mentors. It's different. It's a little bit, you could say, of a non-standard approach to thinking about it, but it's definitely something that I think could work. Now, not everybody's going to agree with this. I'm sure there'll be people who comment that they don't agree, and that's fine. Everybody's got their own thought to it. I'm just giving you a suggestion, especially if you want to be a bit different and think outside the box. The Deathwatch Codex could be that answer for you. They have things like the Infernus Heavy Bolter, which is a Heavy Bolter, Heavy Flamer combo. You could, well, not a combi, but it's a combination of those two weapons. But not in a combi way, so you can fire both however many times you want, in essence. At least that's how it seems to be written in the codex. But anyway, stuff like that, which is definitely not standard equipment, would be right at home in the Mentor's Space Marine chapter's hands. You can convert up stuff, use a standard bit for it or what have you to represent their R&D experimental field testing of weapons and so forth. So that's something else you could consider if you want to. Now when it comes to collecting an army of them past the codex, any of the generic bits and kits from Forge World or GW will work just fine. They don't really have shoulder pads. I mean, there is that Deathwatch squad shoulder pad that is for Mentors, but that's a right shoulder pad, not a left shoulder pad. So if you put it on the left side where the symbol is supposed to go, standardly, it won't work out. It'll be backwards. But whatever. I just want to bring up there is a bit for them. It just would be on the right shoulder pad. Aside from that, though, they don't have anything. But that's okay, because all of the generic bits and kits from Forge World and GW, as well as anything specific that doesn't have any crazily chapter emblazoned symbols going on, you can make use of. That's how Space Marine bits roll. That's what makes them really fun to collect. So you can really personalize your force, and given their experimental field testing of weapons and all that, this gives a lot of potential for converting up weapons and war gear for them, which is pretty cool. So if you're into that, you can have a lot of fun there. When it comes to collecting them color scheme wise and all that, the red symbol for their squad markings, you can just use the white ones. You should be able to make them out and then carefully paint over them in red and be just fine. You could try and find fan-made decal sheets out there for red markings. They do exist, at least partially, so you could always do that, print it out. Or you can use, you can freehand if you're okay with that, and of course you can use any sculpted shoulder pads you may have for squad markings. One other thing you could do is utilize the Dark Angel squad markings. Yes, the tactical arrow would be a different style than what is shown on them, but it's in red, and the rest of the stuff would be in red, and it would work just fine. So that's something you can consider if you so desire. For the chapter symbol, it's a red eagle head in profile. It's on a white background, so you could print it out yourself, do a little bit of the extra legwork, find the fan-made decal sheets that are out there for the mentors, print it out on clear decal paper, and then you'll have this symbol 100% the way it's supposed to look. And because it's going on a white background, the red will definitely be bold. The thing about printing red is it's kind of translucent when you print on clear decal paper. So if you put it on a darker background, you could lose it, but you're putting it on a white background, so it'll show up very boldly and it'll work just fine. If you're just not comfortable doing that, Gin Fritter's Gnomish Workshop, look them up. They got a red eagle head in profile as a decal sheet. It's not the exact same art asset as the profile eagle head that the mentors use, but it's close enough that people will be splitting hairs if they try to call you out on it, in all honesty. So there is that concept as well, where you can just buy it and use that and be just fine. Either way will work. Now lastly, their green tends to be more like a dark angel green and not so much like a salamander's green. But you can do it however you want. I just want to point that out. It's also on their weapons, so that's kind of interesting. That's not the hard part for painting them. The hard part is going to be the white. And all I can say with white is be patient. It's difficult to do white. Some people may have no difficulty, but doing them with all the proper shading and whatnot is a bit difficult for me and for plenty of people, especially to get it to look smooth and not feel chalky or clumpy. That's the hard part. So just be patient. Remember, it's not the entire model, so it's not the end of the world. You just got to take a little bit longer, and it'll be fine. The nice thing, you could say silver lining about doing white and having the white be on the legs, is that if you want to do any weathering effects or mud effects, it'll show up real obvious on the white parts of the armor. So there's that. Anyways, that's really it. So either the Space Marine Codex with whatever supplements, or the Deathwatch Codex can work well to represent these field testing weaponry type of Space Marines. And any of the generic bits and kits will work just fine for them. You can have a field day converting stuff up and really just enjoy the ride of collecting this kind of differently colored chapter in terms of how the colors applied to the armor, and a different bit of fluff for a chapter as well. It can be a lot of fun. So that's the mentors. I like them. They could be a interesting chapter for some of you out there who like the concept of being all techified and field testing and experimental weapons and all that, which really is more so of a styling thing for collecting. But in some cases, like for example the Deathwatch Codex, you can make use of some war gear, so it's not just styling, but you have some different war gear that's in that codex as well. Anyway, I've been repeating myself a few times now, so thanks for sticking through it. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Any questions, comments, or requests, leave them in the comment section. And until next time, take it easy.